Something I notice about cities, whether they're liberal or Republican, is that they make it very difficult for pedestrians to walk around. Um, and unless it's like there's a festival, unless it's like a major part of the tourist area, and even so, um, it's like the people who are doing, I don't know what, but they're just like, let's see how we can make people have to run through a maze, and you know, not to mention how cities don't have off ramps for people in wheelchairs, or they just allow reckless drivers to make make right hand turns, uh, even though there's a no right hand turn sign, but there's never um, any accountability. And the funny thing is that cities are very good about parking tickets, but they're not good about people's safety. And I would assume that cities are getting grants like ADA grants or federal funding as long as they're ADA compliant. And cities are like, oh, we'll be compliant here for 3 blocks, but we're going to neglect all this other stuff, and people are not like bus stops. That's a very easy one to do, or even like kneeling buses, like have your bus drivers use the kneeling bus option. Like what I've noticed recently is buses don't, like the only buses that seem to is like New York, maybe San Francisco, but most bus drivers are like, they're not going to be bothered to make the bus kneeling, and even like elderly people I have seen. And this is from Montana to Iowa to here in Denver. And, I understand that bus drivers have a very, very, difficult job, brutal working conditions, but um, I know they're under a time crunch, but like the bus, you have to like pull yourself up like a foot, like literally 12 inches. And that's just, for some of us, that's very hard. Um, and to get off the bus, it's really awkward. And I don't know. In the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was just understood. You make it easy. You don't make people have to get on, climb a foot up and climb a foot down off a bus. And so yeah, but I noticed that sidewalks, like cities are like, oh, nobody uses the sidewalk. When I was in South Dakota, there was like some type of road work done, and they just tore up a sidewalk. And I'm sure maybe there's some good reason, but like if you're walking there every day, nobody's working there for months on end, for like, I don't know, 6 months straight. And so cities are like, oh, nobody's ever going to use that sidewalk, and so we can just have this indefinitely obstructed. And it just makes it like, and the funny thing is, these very states, whether they're I mean, they're rhino states. Most Republican states are rhino states, Republican and name only. And then blue states too, though. Like, uh folks are just oblivious. Like, it's weird because everybody's trying to do this environmentalist thing. Even red states are pushing this environmentalist situation, but they don't make it comfortable for a pedestrian to walk on the sidewalk, because that's what they want us to do. They don't want us to have cars. They don't make it comfortable to ride the bus, to get on the bus, off the bus, not to mention like the crazy people on the bus who are just allowed to disrupt and endanger everybody else who's peaceably riding the bus. So they're just making, like, like the powers that be, the globalists and their minions, they're telling us, oh, this is our goal. But the goal isn't even that goal. The goal isn't even save the environment or live lighter on the planet. The goal is how much can we take away from you and laugh in your face and be ironic, have a double standard, because that's what we keep on seeing is um, the globalists are, you know, evil, and then they're telling us we're evil, and for some reason, uh, the modern person is so eager to be like, yes, I'm evil, and I think that's some type of like demonization or something like that. Like, oh, I don't deserve the blessings that I have. So I need to feel guilty about that I'm heterosexual, that I'm Caucasian, that I have an education, that I have manners, that I have a belief in Jesus. Because those are all the things that's pushed right now. And there's a small handful of people of color that see that that's kind of bizarre. But a lot of people, whether they're white or of color, they're just like, yeah, I should hate myself and hate other people and hate my country and hate God, and that's going to make everything better. Like, what kind of a world is that going to create? And somehow these people, think it's gonna somehow that they're gonna get out unscathed. But anyways, yeah, I just feel like cities are weaponizing their construction against people that are walking, even though they're saying, "Oh, you should walk." Like the thing is, when you have pedestrians, you have more parking for your tourists, for yourself, for your locals. So you really should encourage that people get to walk and that it's not a dangerous sidewalk like cities. How about shoveling your streets? And that's another way cities can make money. They need to penalize people that don't shovel their sidewalks, property managers that don't shovel their sidewalks. And the thing is, property managers never shovel it, or rarely don't feel like they have to, because they're like, oh, we own 30% of the properties here, so and since we're going to be paying those property taxes, we don't have to follow the law. I guess because that was my experience with a property manager when I was in Montana. So there's businesses that deliberately like have no intention of protecting the public, even their own tenants, because they don't want to spend the money. They can't be bothered. And but the thing is, there are some businesses that do, because like I was like across the street from the negligent property manager. It was called Summit. It's in Montana, and apparently it's based in Oregon. But I think this must be some sort of shell international investment company, because they were just very evil. They had this like when I moved there, I was never given a lease, but the people that did have a lease, it was like, I don't know, 2-3 pages. But when Summit took over, it was like a 25-page lease, and they had a provision that they could charge you $25 for every time you hurt somebody's feelings, that you hurt a manager's feelings. They felt they could charge you for hurting their feelings. And these were evil people, like abusive people. But anyways, across the street from this apartment building that I lived in, there was a parking garage, and I don't know if they had some type of. I mean, I think they did. They just had people who salted the sidewalks, and there were other businesses that did salt the sidewalks, if only in front of their place. But that's well and good. But like, if only cities would like, that's a great way of making money. Like, charge people money for not shoveling their sidewalks or not salting their sidewalks, not taking care of their sidewalks. Charge people money, fine people for recklessly driving. Like, cities are always complaining they don't have enough money, but these are legitimate things. Like people parking, that's not really a danger. Like parking tickets, that's not really harming anybody. But it just shows you where the priorities are of cities. Cities want to make things as inconvenient as possible. And I'm talking about American cities. I'm talking about Republican cities. Like I just don't get it. And it's like, cities want to make things as difficult and frustrating as possible and charge you the most amount of money to do it and to waste a lot of your time. That's what I'm observing. And it's like they're trying to make you as frustrated and violated as possible, and I guess people get used to it, and I guess they just, maybe cities are just trying to make people alcoholics and drug addicts, uh, because just constant frustration, constant obstruction, what's the point, and one of the cities that did this was Missoula, Montana. Like, even how their streets were engineered. Missoula is one of the top 10 in the world for the worst street engineering, and so it's a big driving culture, and it's the highest, or at least when I was there, it was the highest in the country for suicide. And it was rich people committing suicide, poor people committing suicide. So there, and I think there's something about, so they get forest fire smoke. So when you have all this forest fire smoke, that's interfering with your oxygenation, and long winters and the crazy traffic. I mean, I really do think, like, the really frustrating, you have to spend a half an hour to go like a few blocks, like how Missoula is built. And Missoula is very, like, one local called it inbred. It's very insulated, provincial. So, there's 3 or 4 generations of families that have been there. And so it's not on your merit, it's not on how good a job you do or good a person. It's kind of the family status. It was a very political, like, high school kind of a place. I mean, there were some nice people there, but it was just, it had its limitations. Beautiful location, but a lot of serious problems. um, and like Freemasonic stuff, satanic stuff, witchcraft stuff, and yeah. And I think, like, human trafficking, because it's a border state, Montana. So I heard some things and saw some things, and I never had it confirmed. I mean, one of my friends was gang stalked, and it was allowed by that local housing authority. And people just, like, if you weren't, I don't know, like, if you weren't politically connected, you were just considered part of the human sacrifice. Like, what's that guy, John Krakauer? He did a book about, he called the book Missoula, and everybody was upset at him, not because it was false, but because he was just giving Missoula, like, to them, a bad name, even though what he wrote about was true. I mean, it was too painful of a topic. I think it was like, college rapes as a scene, and like, there's all these, like, mansions and kind of spooky, empty streets by the college, and there's just something strange about that city, but every city, actually. I think, I don't know. Like, it's weird because the biggest, the cities that are considered the worst, like New York or San Francisco, I don't find them to be as evil as these more insular cities. And it kind of reminds me of Sherlock Holmes when he's like, the worst things happen out in the country. And I know bad things happen in cities, terrible things and stuff, but I don't know. There just seems to be strength in a large population, maybe of diverse people. And I think people who just live there in that lifetime, perhaps because when it's like 3 generations or 4 generations, that's like some type of stronghold. That's like some type of demonic spell, it seems, as opposed to people who just moved there from Timbuktu, and the evil doesn't seem to be as entrenched. Although this is just speculation. I don't know if that really is the case, but that's just the sense I get. So, anyways, yeah, I just feel like cities, even if they're pushing this greenwashing thing, like Portland, Oregon, I lived there, and they would advertise to themselves. They would spend advertising dollars on the max and whatnot, saying how green they were, but the buses weren't always running properly. The machines to get your ticket, most of the time they were broken, so you could get a fine, but there weren't people fixing the tickets. They spent money on cops to check for your tickets, but they wouldn't ever fix the ticket machines at the major locations even. And this would happen. Like, I lived in Beaverton for several years, and it would just be always the case. And I talked to this other lady who took the bus, and she's like, I just stopped complaining because Beaverton doesn't care. And I even wrote a song about how bad TriMet was, and this was in the height of like how Portland, Oregon was such a green oriented city, and the thing is, a lot of the cyclists were just fair weather cyclists. So a lot of cyclists, bicycle activists that I met, they had a car. Not only did they have a car, they had an SUV because they wanted to go camping and they wanted to do road trips and they wanted to have a lot of, be able to carry a lot of gear. So they weren't even like in a little mini Toyota or something like that. Like, they had a gas, but they saw no problem with their double standards or whatever. And I got, like, for some reason I was regarded as not environmental enough, even though I've never driven. When you don't drive, and you're on a limited income and you're not flying a plane, um, and you're a minimalist, you're not really an ecological threat to the planet. Uh, and it's funny because the people who are the biggest ecological maniacs, zealots, fascists, these people are the biggest ecological abusers of the earth, if we're going to use that term. That's the strangest thing, is like, they're like, I'm going to have as many cars as I want, and I'm going to fly, and I'm going to use all sort of products that are hard on the planet, and I'm going to have a career that's hard on the planet, and I'm going to do things with my family that's hard on the planet, like, if we're going to believe all this hype that they're talking about. But, these environmental fascists are then like, but other people should do what I'm not doing. And, first it starts, they're like, so in Africa, they shouldn't have cars. In China, they shouldn't have cars. In India, they shouldn't have cars. In Latin America, they shouldn't have cars. So that's what these liberal, progressive liberals really think. Like, in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, well, they shouldn't do it, but I get to, and my daughter gets to, and my granddaughter gets to, and my great granddaughter gets to, and everybody in my family gets to, because everybody has to, like, that's the funny thing about this liberal shtick, is everybody's very into conspicuous consumption and keeping up with the Joneses. Like, these people are totally addicted to money and showing off and, fine living. And it's just weird, because if you really want to be ecologically conscious, you're a minimalist, and you live light on the earth, and you go without a lot of things, and you don't really have a lot of kids, honestly, if you're trying to be easier on the world. And if you do have children, you don't drive them hither and yon, and blah blah blah. And if you are going to have children and have cars and do this whole big thing, stop being this ecological hypocrite. Just realize the earth is a big place, and you are here to flourish and have a relationship with God, and maybe you'll have some perspective and not hate yourself for you know existing, because I think it's twisted people. So, anyways, thank you, YouTube, for being here, for letting me share my thoughts. God bless.